Hey, what's up, guys? Hope everyone's safe and enjoyed our first week of virtual learning. And we're going to continue on with part three of chapter four, section two, France under Louis XIV. Let's recap some things from the previous video, just make sure everyone's on the same page. All right. Obviously, we discussed the transition between Louis XIII and Louis XIV, and if you know by this picture and what we've discussed, this guy's got a pretty serious nickname that he goes by, and if you're thinking Sun King, you're absolutely right. We discussed some reasons why. Number one, obviously, is the fact that he believes he's the center of the nation. Everything revolves around him, just like the sun is in terms of the universe. We also talked about his politics, what he did not only to gain power but to maintain power. He gained a lot of support from various groups. One group would be the intendants. He hired these individuals. They were middle class people. He hired them to basically go around France and collect taxes and recruit military servicemen for him. That was a great play because in return, these people would support him. They wouldn't try to rebel against him. If you remember, we talked about early in Louis XIV's career as king, the country of France rebelled against him in La Fronde, and it was his goal throughout his reign to never let that happen again. He did that by gaining support from people who once were threatened by him. He also sold the title of nobility. We discussed in France the estate system and how certain individuals had to pay all the taxes. The third estate, where the first and second estate didn't have to pay taxes, they were exempt from taxes. So many people wanted to buy the title of nobility, and this actually made him and France a significant amount of money because people were very interested in earning that privilege. With that money, he built up France's military to one of the top in the world. Under Louis, in his 72-year reign as king, France will certainly take off as a world power. We also discussed Jean-Baptiste Colbert. This guy's in charge of managing the finances and the money in France. And we talked about some policies that he had, mercantilism, which was basically the idea that you should export more than you import. You should trade out to other countries more than you buy from other countries. And how do you do that? Through creating colonies. Now that you're creating colonies in various locations, you're taking advantage of their resources, so you don't have to trade for those resources with a foreign country. They're now yours. We discussed this in class. It goes from being the bodega to the Walmart, where you can basically buy everything under one roof. That was the goal of France. That was the goal of Spain. That was the goal of England. We discussed, for example, sugar, Spain, Cuba, England, Jamaica, France, Haiti. It's all about colonies and feeding towards the exporting more than you import. So moving along. I just want to touch base on this. If you didn't know this, this portion of the United States all was named Louisiana. The territory of Louisiana, that was actually discovered by the French under Louis XIV's reign. It's actually named after him completely. Louisiana, this territory, which we later bought from France in, I believe, 1803, it was named after him because when the French discovered it by sailing down the Mississippi River, okay, he was king. So they honored him by naming the territory after him. This right here is the royal flag of France. And if you ever see this symbol here, it's called a fleur de lis, and it's basically the royal symbol of France. And yes, if you haven't drawn the connection, the New Orleans Saints, the football team, their symbol is honoring the fact that they are in Louisiana. New Orleans is in Louisiana. So they honor their history by putting the French royal symbol on their helmet. Again, this is very important. You need to really understand this. And this created a lot of problems in France. This was the system that they had in play for hundreds of years, and it created a lot of animosity amongst these three levels. The first estate, which is the clergy, the church members. The second estate is the nobility, and these two tiers did not have to pay taxes. And Louis was actually selling entrance from the third estate into the second estate. You could jump from this estate, where you did have to pay taxes, into this estate and be tax free. And a lot of people who could afford the title were very, very interested in making this jump. This created a significant animosity amongst all three levels. The second estate wanted even more privilege as the first estate. The third estate just wanted everyone to equally pay taxes. And this will eventually explode in the year 1789. Stay tuned, though. It's going to get crazy. Let's talk about Versailles, the symbol of power. Versailles was Louis XIV's palace. Okay. Louis turned just his family's royal hunting ground, a small little vacation house about 12 miles outside of Paris. He started just expanding on it. Okay. He built it from just, like I said, a small hunting lodge and created ultimately this huge city that was, headlined by his palace, which is named Versailles. Okay, this was a symbol of the Sun King's wealth and power. Why did he do this? Because he could. This was the ultimate flex on everybody in France and every king across the world. I have money, I have this military, I have this huge empire, and I'm showing it off in my palace. Everybody take notes. Okay. This was not only his home, but he moved the entire French government there. All laws, all rules, all taxes would all be created there because everything revolved around him. His room is actually, if you locate where the cursor is right smack dab in the middle. A true symbol of the sun because everything revolved around him. Another tactic that he used was he let nobles live there. Why would he do that? Well, remember his early career where nobles were rebelling against him. They would never dare rebel against him if they were living under his roof. In fact, they would end up sucking up to him, not rebelling against him. Who else lived there? Officials and, of course, servants who made this all go round. These are just some views from the interior. This is probably the most famous room, and it's just a hallway. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's just a hallway. It's called the Hall of Mirrors. Just a basic hallway. Everything from every piece of square footage is gold, glitz, glamour, chandeliers, everything, because he could. Just wanted to give you all some statistics on how crazy this palace actually is. I've been there twice. And I've only gone to this portion of the palace. As I said, just this portion right here. This is ultimately a large city. I believe it has its own zip code. You actually even have this side palace over here, which I believe was only for the Queen's family. So it's crazy to see. Like I said, I've only been there twice, and I've only truly scratched the surface. But just some statistics. 30,000 acres, which I believe the White House only sits on 2 acres. If I'm wrong, hit me up in the comments. The gardens include 400 sculptures and 1,400 fountains. Okay, who's paying that water bill? The third estate. Incredible. 5,000 pieces of furniture, 6,000 paintings, 200 servants. Okay. 3,000 people worked on the construction. Again, it all started as a small hunting lodge and just blossomed and blew up. And, just a mere 700 rooms, 1,200 fireplaces, 60 staircases. And this would have been around $2 billion to build. Here's the difference between Henry IV and Louis XIV. Henry IV built roads in France that everyone could use. A chicken in every pot was his goal. This was Louis XIV's just, I am the best. I was chosen by God. I'm using your tax money to make this all possible. As you would imagine, this made a lot of people within France extremely upset of the irresponsibility that the monarch used. This is the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg in Russia, and I just want to show you this because Versailles was a model. Okay, other kings and queens were taking notes and inspired by this. So the king of Russia, the Tsar, was looking at Louis XIV's plans and basically saying, give me that, make me that. So it inspired monarchs around the world. Louis XIV and nobles. What do I want you to know here? Well, number one, at one time, nobles were a threat to the power of the king. We discussed this in the Fronde, in the rebellion. Now, he doesn't view them as rivals. He brings them into his palace. He lets them live there in that palace, go to all the fine parties. And what does he get in return? They kiss up to him. They're not rebelling against him. They're kissing up to him. They want him to be happy. And the greatest privilege, nobles did not have to pay taxes. That's why they were kissing up. One way they would kiss up, the morning ritual of the levee. This is where every morning the king would wake up and nobles would basically help him get ready. And they would say that about 100 people would be in the room while this guy would just stand around and people would get him ready for his day. Talk about kissing up. But this was the norm in Versailles. You wanted the privilege. You wanted to be at the parties. You wanted to be at the palace. Before this, it was nobles questioning the king. Now it's, hey, can I tie your shoe for you? It's incredible how he basically used politics and his power to flip the script on what the nobility looked at him as. Are you paying attention? Let's see. How did Louis XIV secure support from French nobles? By letting them live in Versailles. And he also didn't make them pay taxes. That's how you get people to suck up to you. That's how you secure support. That's how you make sure people nod their head at you and tell you what you want to say, by giving them things, by giving them the privilege of living in the palace and also not paying taxes, which is a great privilege. His legacy. Ruled for 72 years, longer than any other monarch. Under Louis, France was the strongest state in all of Europe. So now it's France's time to shine. We saw how Spain shined and failed with the Armada. Now it's France's time to shine. Some of his decisions caused eventual failure. How? Going to war a lot with England. Cost him a lot of money. Made significant enemies. As you expand empires, you're competing and you're making enemies. That's what happened to France. Rival rulers would form alliances. Believe it or not, the Dutch and the English teamed up. Not because they loved each other, not because they were best friends, but because they wanted to balance out the power. They figured, France is blowing up. The only way we got a chance to balance everything out is if we team up together. So it's called balance of power. It prevents one country from dominating. So like I said, the Dutch, the Netherlands, and England came together in an alliance, not because they were best friends, but because they wanted to level the playing field. And as you can see, this is what I'm talking about in terms of the balance of power. You didn't want France to dominate. These two countries came together to balance out everything. And of course, Spain, or what's left of the empire, sided with the French, both being French being Catholic as well as Spain. Remember, France being Catholic because Louis XIV got rid of the Edict of Nantes. And some things you should know, guys. I would take a look at these terms because there's a quiz coming very, very soon. Wink, wink, tomorrow. Get familiar, people. I hope everybody enjoyed the latest installment and the final installment of Chapter 4, Section 2, France under Louis XIV. I hope everyone's staying safe. And any questions, you know where to reach me. E. Valdez at WNYschools.net. Take care, guys.